for coming to Sex Trafficking and the Kentucky Derby. This program is being put on by the Human Rights Advocacy Program, and also it has been funded by the Diversity Committee. The food you're eating has been funded by them, so we thank them. Yay! I really appreciate you all being here as we spend this afternoon discussing a really important issue to our community here, something that is very pervasive but not always known by people. And this is why we have our panel of speakers whose experiences and expertise in sex trafficking will hopefully enlighten all of you on the issues here in Louisville. So our first speaker here, or our first panelist, is Angela Renfro, who is founder and executive director of the Kristy Love Foundation. The Kristy Love Foundation is a nonprofit that has been around for over 8 years and has served over 4,000 victims of trafficking and over 25 homeless folks in need. The Kristy Love Foundation is a survivor-led, trauma-informed program that provides comprehensive services for girls and women suffering from addiction, prostitution, and human trafficking. All of the organization's work is informed by Angela's personal experiences in which she lived through sexual abuse, prostitution, addiction, and human sex trafficking from the age of 3 to age 29. She now devotes her life working to end this form of modern slavery through the Kristy Love Foundation. Our next panelist is Amy Leenard, founder and director of Free to Hope, Inc. Free to Hope, Inc. is a nonprofit fighting to end human trafficking and sexual exploitation of women and children throughout Kentucky. She was herself victimized by multiple sex crimes beginning at the age of 7 until 19 years old. She now devotes her life to finding new approaches to prevent sexual abuse, exploitation, and human trafficking. And finally, well, not finally, before finally, John Moberly. He is the commissioner for the Department of Investigations in the Kentucky Office of the Attorney General. Before joining the office, he joined the Kentucky State Police in 1991, and during that time, he served as Assistant Commander of Strategic Planning and Commander of Records and Identification. He also became a certified instructor through the Department of Criminal Justice Training, and he also sat on the board of the National Search Committee and National Governors Security Association. After retiring from the Kentucky State Police in 2015, he continued his service to the public at the Office of the Attorney General, in the position he's serving in now as Commissioner. And he currently sits on the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council and oversees the Kentucky Statewide Human Trafficking Task Force Law Enforcement Subcommittee. And last but not least, we have Professor Joanne Sweeney, who will be our moderator for today. Professor Sweeney teaches lawyering skills and writing for practice. Prior to coming to Louisville, she was a Westerfield Fellow at Loyola University, New Orleans College of Law. She clerked for the Honorable Ferdinand F. Fernandez at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Professor Sweeney then practiced as an employment litigator at Mannett, Phelps & Phillips, LLP, before returning to academia. In 2009, she completed her PhD in law at Queen Mary University of London. Speakers. Yay, speakers. Yeah, speakers.
Again, thank you everyone for coming. So I thought one of the first things, thank you Suing for the great introductions. I think the first thing to talk about is, I think a lot of people here don't realize that human trafficking is a local issue. And I think it would be really useful for you all to share partially maybe what you do to combat human trafficking in this community, but also to talk about how prevalent it is and how hidden.
Good.
My name is Angela Renfro. I'm a survivor of human trafficking, and the Kristy Love Foundation provides a safe place for young girls and women who are victim of sex trafficking and human trafficking. Any kind of trauma. We also provide the necessary things to rebuild them. We know what it takes to get free and stay free. A lot of things that we are seeing in Louisville, Kentucky is survivor sex. To have been trafficked that way, to have somewhere to live, to eat, to get a drink of water, to clothe them, and things like that. So the numbers are very high. We look at the average, the youngest girl that we have in our home right now, she just turned 18. We get multiple calls, all type of night and day, it doesn't matter. I'm real grateful that I'm a member of the Survivor Council with Andy Bashir office, and also partnership with Free to Hope.
And of course, my name is Amy. Started Free to Hope about 5 years ago. When we started, the whole idea was how can we prevent it? What kind of prevention programs can we do? How can we do things that I felt, quite frankly, weren't being done really well yet. We have gotten to a certain point with that. I think there's a long way to go with it. I think we need to continue to keep getting the word out, to keep educating people, to hopefully stop it. You know, if you can stop trafficking a situation before it ever begins, you know, you spend a whole lot less money and you come back with a person that's going to be in much better shape than if you wait until after they're being trafficked. We just recently opened a drop-in center on Barrett Avenue, and it's going really well. It kind of fills in some of the gaps. That's at least what I feel like, really, that aren't being done. I mean, we have victims that, you know, we're receiving bus passes and now don't. So, you know, we're picking up on that and getting them bus passes. I mean, it's just, it's really sad when you see how hard it is for these people to get their life back on track, and they don't have the ability that you and I do. And so that's our big thing now. Where can we step in to try and be the middleman to try and help? So.
All right, and I'm John Moberly. Spent my first 5 or 6 years with Kentucky State Police as a sex crimes detective. Moved into child sex crimes, kind of a specialty field. Started promoting, moved into a detective sergeant, moved up to lieutenant, where I oversaw 13 counties of general crime, sex crimes, everything. When I retired in 2015, I had taken numerous classes on human trafficking, but did not truly understand what human trafficking was. And I can say, I'm on the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council now. We decide what law enforcement gets taught. And we do that for the academies, we also do it for interim type training. And what I found was the training that we had just really was not in touch with what occurs in Kentucky or even in most states. And so, you know, I spent 24 and a half years with state police and really didn't understand, didn't think that it was really happening here. And I had contact with human trafficking victims, but what I found very quickly was, just like Angela had mentioned, these individuals look at themselves as survivors. So if an officer is taught to ask the question, are you a human trafficking victim, they're going to say no. I mean, they're not even really understand what that is. They're a survivor. They're doing what they have to do to survive. So when I came onto the Attorney General's office with the Department of Criminal Investigations, it was important. It was something that it was brought to my attention that we really need to look at. So I went to my first statewide human trafficking task force meeting, and I was the only law enforcement person there. And there was probably 30-something people there. You had some non-government organizations, like what they do. You had the Cabinet for Family and Children, and actually I was the only man there. And I just thought, well, this, you know, law enforcement is supposed to be the ones out finding these issues. They're the ones that are responding to these phone calls and complaints. And recognized really quickly that I did not understand what was going on. I had never had contact with individuals like Angela. And that education in the spring of 2016 made me realize that law enforcement was really missing the boat. Prosecutors were really missing the boat. And so in 2016, started trying to raise awareness, and that kind of morphed into basic education, really rewriting what law enforcement is taught. And we've taught, I don't know, well over 1,000 officers now. But even with that, human trafficking, whether it be labor or sex, it's very broad and it's very complex. And it's, right now I feel like, and I was just telling Amy, I feel like we're learning so much. As we do more cases, and we've got, I think right now, 17 or 18 active cases. We're looking for 11 runaway young women that have left. 9 of them are from the Louisville area. And so for me, I guess my experience with human trafficking has really changed. And now we're trying to be a catalyst to try to educate. And to educate not just the basics, but to understand the complexities of human trafficking. So that's kind of where we're at now. And we're seeing some progress, but it's going to take years before we can get law enforcement to really understand it, and even longer to get the prosecutors. I mean, we're taking cases to these prosecutors, and they're like, I can't try this. I can't put this lady up on the stand. I mean, she's a heroin addict, and she's this and that, and well, this is why. I mean, that's part of the problem. These traffickers are creating opioid-addicted women, and so there's a lot going into it. But right now, I feel like I'm, just a year and a half, 2 years into starting to understand what human trafficking really is. But it's really thankful to ladies like this that are really pushing the movement.
Do we have any sense of the numbers, like how prevalent human trafficking is?
What do you?
Well, let me see. The numbers are very high. I could say I know 48% of the trafficked youth that under age 18 is 48%. With the adults, I say 67%. We see the numbers anywhere from. In the white Caucasian is 67%, African American 37, 34, something like that. And we even had girls from Kenya, and today we recently got one from Jamaica. So they come from all over. The numbers varies. We know that the numbers goes up in the wintertime because it's more girls out there that don't have a home, safe place they can go to, so they do anything they can to survive. And so the predator and the Johns knows that. The money is very low during the wintertime. We know through my own personal experiences that it could get low as $2. You'll sell yourself for $2 just to get something to eat.
Thing is, I don't think you'll ever get any good numbers.
Yes. Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
It's also hidden. It's also outside the public view. You have to know what the difference between prostitution and human trafficking is, and you cannot do that unless you can get in someone's head. Yeah. So, I mean, I know both Angela and I treat both of them as the same.
Yes.
Because you talk to these people, and I mean, the majority of them have been trafficked at some point in time. They can go in and out of being, a federal victim. So you cannot come up with good numbers.
Yeah, and you hit on that you treat prostitution and human trafficking the same thing.
Yes.
The individuals that we talk to, they don't necessarily choose that. I mean, the girls we're talking to say, I wanted to be a nurse, I wanted to be an attorney, I want to do these things, and it becomes a matter of survival. And so I'm lucky. I oversee an agency. We've got 28 detectives right now. They're not allowed to charge women with prostitution. If we do a sting and they come to us, we offer them resources because they are one day away from maybe becoming a human trafficking victim, where they are forced to do these things and becoming even a more addicted individual because of the opioids that are forced on them. And that's part of the control piece that these traffickers do. So the numbers, the question, going to come back to your numbers there. Like they said, no way to know. But the thing is, every community, if you have internet service in your community, you have got human trafficking.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. And it's,
And we can prove it.
yeah.
You know, we can go on
Unbelievable.
Backpage ads, we can go on some other sites.
Yeah.
You can see how they fluctuate. You know, a lot of those people are victims, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, some are not. But you treat them like they are, you sit there and watch them, and that's just one segment. But you can tell to some extent what's going on in the community.
And it's very important that we don't confuse human trafficking and prostitution. For me, they're all the same. A lot of girls don't even know that they're being trafficked. You know what I'm saying? Until we present that they're being trafficked, because a lot of them think that their pimp is their boyfriend. So we call it the grooming process, and the grooming process can go. I call it the honeymoon period. You know, the first they give you a few little clothes and little trinkles here and there, and then they branch off, and then they get worse. It's a process, and then they go back to the honeymoon period. So it's like you're being re-traumatized all over again. And then we call it trauma bond, where it's like a family bond. You have them call them daddy, sister. You have your own mother. It's like you already separate yourself from society. It's like a society inside a society. That's why human trafficking is the largest, the third largest organized crime in the United States.
You know, one of the things I would like from the legal perspective and the prosecutors, the attorney's perspective is, you know, our world is so caught up in numbers today, and one is too many.
Sure.
Yeah.
None of you want a mother, a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a grandmother to be trafficked. And so I don't know why it matters, the number, you know? I mean, one is too many. So.
Well, I mean, I'm the one that asked. So, so the reason why I even brought it up is to really hit home that this is a very prevalent practice,
Yeah.
and people don't even realize. When people think of human trafficking, they think of other countries,
Yeah.
and it's not something that happens in other. And I agree. If they had said 5, I would have been like, oh my God, that's you know. So it's not. I'm not trying to say, well, unless it's this many, it's not a big
Right.
deal. But that it exists, and it's quite prevalent, and yet we don't know about it, and it's hidden. And I think the idea that you know, law enforcement not recognizing it either, because they think of it as prostitution, and so it's the prostitute that goes to jail. And so I'm so glad that the retraining is happening, because I think that is key. And the other reason why I brought up the numbers is because I wanted to talk about next how the numbers go up around Derby. And everyone thinks of Derby as this fun, happy thing where we all wear hats. Well, not, I mean, the men don't wear hats as much, I get it. But it is a huge spike in human trafficking that women are brought in to the Louisville area from across the country to satisfy the needs of men who want that.
Or women.
I'm generalizing, yes. Mostly men wanting women, mostly. Vast majority, we'll say. But you had a question.
Yeah, that's a great transition. My question is, what specifically about Derby makes the number spike? Is it that Johns are coming in to use the women? Is it that the people with all the money are buying and selling women? Or is it that they're kidnapping women and putting them into sex trafficking?
It's a combination of all three of them.
Okay.
And as today, right now, they are already recruiting right now. You know, more demands, more young girls and women. I know when I was being trafficked during Derby, we always started like 2 weeks before that. We already here. We made our reservation. He already made our reservation like maybe a year in advance. It was okay to rent out a room for $1,000, because by the time the weekend was up, Derby weekend, I made over $10,000 and I didn't get to see none of it. So when we leave there, then we go to Nashville, and then we go to Atlanta, which back then it was called the Freaknik. They don't have it no more. They shut that down. So, yeah, you have on the same clothes for about a week. So.
But that's what when you're talking about trafficking, it can look like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
It can look like a boyfriend selling his girlfriend, or it can be even up to international crime.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about trafficking specifically, there are groups that just go around certain parts of the country on a track, you know, so to speak. They go to this event, this event, this event, this event, and that's what they do.
And you
So
can see it in the
springs
back
up.
page ads,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So they're talking about
definitely.
back page, and it's kind of like Craigslist,
Right.
and you know
It's
what are
just
they
a way to gauge
yeah.
what we
So
see
the ads,
going
there's
on.
ads that you know women put up to sell themselves basically, and there's been a lot of studies on this to be able to determine which ones are you know just what they seem to be, and the vast majority are actually women being put up to it and being trafficked. And the number of ads offering these services goes up a huge amount around Derby because I know there's an increased demand. And so I see we have tons of questions, so I want to try to get
Let me answer,
yeah.
because what she brought up is a very, very good point. All right, the Derby Festival is the largest event in North America. Derby Festival, 2-week period. So they say that between 150 and 170,000 people will come into the city of Louisville that aren't normally there during that time period. Well, you've got money, you've got a lot of cash flows during that event. That's part of the problem. That is very lucrative to people that want to work in the field of fraud. So there's a lot of theft. There's an uptick in drugs being brought in. So crime in general goes up. But what Angela talked about is very accurate in that it's an opportunity, and there's things that go on. The whole Las Vegas effect. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. That kind of concept happens. We see it at the Farm and Machinery Show. There's a national Farm and Machinery Show that occurs every February here in Louisville. Well, those individuals are traveling from California or Washington, wherever. They come in, their wives aren't with them. It's an opportunist. I mean, it's an opportunist act. And so there's more demand, and basically you've got people trying to fill that demand.
Yeah. Yeah, question.
Yeah, we got lots, so we'll start.
Okay, so I think it was the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act that just passed the last week or two, and I know that Craigslist has taken their personal page down, but Backpage still hasn't. And I know for my class I'm doing right now, they did a research study where the ads that are posted on the personal section like spikes up a whole bunch around Derby season. Do you think since Craigslist has taken that down, there'll be a decrease in like human trafficking around this time?
No, they'll find another way.
We
No,
also
absolutely not.
Watched a documentary of this one woman who had been to the human trafficking thing, and she said it wasn't. How do you all feel about like the personal pages being taken down? Because that is like how you said, something like Sex to Survive. Like they post their stuff on it. Like it's hard to differentiate between prostitution and human sex trafficking. Like, is it the good thing that they're taking down the personal section, or is it bad because it's going to help people as well as hurt others who do that? Like, do you think this is all in the correct direction, or how do you think that's?
So the documentary I Am Jane Doe talks all about Backpage and the legal struggles to try to get them to take this stuff down. And I don't think I think that there is a way to keep some things up, those personal ads, but they know like the codes that are used by human traffickers are known, and they evolve and they change. But you know, the problem with Backpage was that it was basically instructing people how to not get caught by the cops and what words to avoid and not use, so that they wouldn't, so that the police wouldn't be able to look at the ads and know, oh gosh, this is human trafficking, because again, they use these code phrases. So example of the phrase new in town used to mean underage. That's an underage girl. That's what it means. And they, like I said, evolves, or some use emojis now. But you know, the problem with Backpage is that it had these like terms of use, and it said you can't use these phrases. And in some sense, it's like, oh, don't use those so you don't traffic. But really, it's just teaching them these are the phrases that law enforcement knows are associated with human trafficking. So I do think there is a way to put rules in place, perhaps, and help the police to monitor it. So because if you know what to look for, you can see it.
It's morphing, and what we're finding is, you know, Backpage, you know, they've changed how they were advertising it. Craigslist has completely taken them off 2 weeks ago, but there's other sites, City Vibe, there's USA Sex Guide, there's dozens of literally sites. But the other thing that we're seeing is that it's kind of like drug trafficking. You know, drug traffickers, there is advertising on the internet. I mean, that occurs. But most of that is mouth to mouth. You have to know who to go to. And we're seeing more of that going on now. So it makes it more difficult for law enforcement to track. But there's something called that USA Sex Guide. And what that is, individuals, users, abusers of these women, they actually go in and they rate them. And so what we're doing now is we're targeting those guys in hopes that it'll help us find them, because what they're doing, they're communicating amongst themselves on new girl coming into town, this is my cell phone number, I'll hook you up, kind of thing. So we're kind of going after that. So they're getting creative. We just got to be able to keep up.
Right.
And so
the more we train them, the more we train the public, the more they get trained up, the more awareness. And you know, from my own experience, you know, they glad that all we do is sit at the computer. You know what I'm saying? So they finding ways and means to how to recruit and get more girls involved in human trafficking. So while we sitting behind the computers and everything, what they doing, they're going to our local grocery store. They sending one girl out there, you know what I'm saying, that she might not have to work more than the other girl do. So we got our famous story, everybody know Dino's. I mean, yeah, everybody go there, get chicken and everything. But I promise you, there's a girl who's been trafficked there right now. Be picked up here. That's why I don't allow my girls to go to the store there, because I know they be always proposition. You know, it could be just a simple hi, but we already know the look that they give us, like, you know, signs. You know, we wear by emojis and stuff. It's certain signs, certain words that you use, certain body language that you use to let you know, I want, you know, are you, you know, available. Thank you. Yeah, in that terms. So it's I might need to create a book on language and stuff like that for that, because it's really kind of tricky. You gotta really live it to know it. You know, so.
And Backpage, you know, if they shut it down, we've actually had kids that have been found because of that. So it's kind of scary if you do take it and, you know, get rid of it. Then we don't have any pictures out there.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
it's
super
super
complicated. You know, so it's a catch-22.
Just kind of like talking about that and thinking about there's Backpage and there's more regulations that we do that. How would we regulate sites like Snapchat or Instagram, where I can't imagine that they're not being used?
They are.
Oh, yeah.
They are. I mean, it's also, you know, with the internet and the way everything is now, it's so grand. I don't know how you
dark web,
ever go
we're already
back.
seeing,
exactly.
Bitcoin transactions,
Bitcoin.
we're already seeing that in
Yeah.
Louisville, so.
Yeah. You can't go back.
I'm just going to make a loop, so.
So you talk about recruiting in advance of Derby, and to bring it back to something more local, do you see that like the runaways from our foster care system are seriously feeding that, and how and what are we doing to protect those girls and boys from running away from our created system that's supposed to keep them safe right into the arms of traffickers?
Yeah.
Well, my goal is to educate and also to provide a different protocol on how to keep our children safe inside the foster care, and also provide awareness. Me and Amy, that's our main goal. We know that a lot of children in foster care and it's coming out of foster care, when they turn 18 years old, they don't even have a clue. They don't even know how to go get regular ID. They don't even know how to fill an application and things like that, because something had happened to them that they ain't been able to talk about their secret regarding. Most of the time, we know that they even been sexual abused or been trafficked. And from my own experience as a little girl, that I was told not to tell anyone. It made me feel like it was my fault. So I kept that secret in, and then the only way I knew how to survive my emotions, it was to be trafficked or be consumed with drugs.
Oh, yeah, it's more than just the foster care, but
Yeah.
foster care is a big, big deal right now.
Yes, more.
The missing persons, this is a big thing right now, is we're finding that these, as soon as they leave, they run away from foster care, they run away from another entity. There's all kinds here in Louisville that manage these girls. They are being scooped up, I mean, very quickly, and they're being forced into prostitution. They're being trafficked. And let me just kind of, I mean, this is a big, big issue. We've been looking for a girl that ran away last Friday from a local entity here, and 15 years old. She and all these they're so similar. I mean, you gotta take all these young ladies, and you're like, it's the same story over and over. They were sexually abused as a child. They had come from a broken home, and they are looking to better themselves. They get put into a situation, either foster care or something, and they're not used to that type of restriction. So they run out on their own, and they have to survive.
Yeah.
And these, the last 3 or 4 cases that we picked up recently here in the Louisville area, they're all exactly the same. The average age is 16 and a half. Young, white ladies, teenage girls, that, and it's everything. I'm just saying this is recently what we're seeing. They have run away from an entity or some sort of foster care because they felt that they were being suppressed or repressed. I mean, in that environment, they weren't used to that, and they got out, realized I'm not going to survive. I don't have money, and they start dabbling. They all have a little bit of drug usage in their background. I mean, they've tried marijuana. They've tried. They may have tried an opioid. They may have tried cocaine, but within 2 or 3 days of getting picked up, and there's individuals. The last 2 girls that we have rescued, both of them said, I ran away, I got into Louisville, I was trying to figure out how to make money, and a vehicle pulls up and says, hey, what do you need? I bet you're needing some money right now, and this is what I can do for you. And within 3 days of that was using heroin multiple times a day and was addicted. And so that's how that pimp, they go out looking. And we have found pimps literally standing outside the courthouse here in Louisville watching these juvenile courts for these girls coming out. And if there's no parent or anything with them, they're approaching them saying, I can give you a good life. I can hook you up. I can do this for that. It turns into the boyfriend situation. And I mean, it's unbelievable. But the foster care thing, it's not foster care's fault. I mean, I don't blame anybody in foster care. But what we're also seeing is that these girls, a lot of times, all their needs aren't being met. They're not being counseled on those years of sex abuse that they had from the age of 4 to 10. And, at 14, 15 years old, they're reaching out and they're wanting to get out. They don't want to be repressed. They feel like their whole life they've been abused, and it's complicated. It really is.
They've done a study recently, the Human Trafficking Research Institute at U of L, where they did a study of homeless youth in the city, and a very large percentage of these homeless youth had been trafficked at one point or another. So it's a real problem with homelessness. It leads into sex trafficking very easily.
I understand Derry's a big event, but what are we learning from other events like Super Bowl, Daytona 500, Indianapolis 500, all these big events, and anything about and Final Four, bowling, I've been talking about lately. I'm trying to make things happen. The Super Bowl, this past year's Super Bowl in Minnesota, what they did was they saturated for weeks leading up to the Super Bowl missing persons reports. So all these girls, not just within the city, but surrounding states and everything, they saturated that city. They gave booklets with all these young women and men, or teenage boys and kids that had run away, and they said, if you see this child, they are missing and endangered. And so they put them in motels, convenience stores, pharmacies, and on Super Bowl weekend, they recovered over 200 missing children just in that one city. And so, that's kind of a big thing right now. Is trying to figure out, we've got to get the public involved, because, I mean, the more eyes, obviously, the more knowledge that's out there, the more likely we're going to find these individuals. But we're seeing the same story over and over. So the big takeaway, I mean, we really studied the Super Bowl, what they did up there. I really like it, and I've been kind of looking for how we can make those things happen. And Angela and I have talked briefly about it, and
I got some ideas.
Yeah, we need to educate. We need to get, and there was concerns. I had people from the cabinet calling me saying, you can't put these missing girls' pictures out there. Like, what do you mean? They're on the internet. I mean, they're missing. They're already out there. And they're like, well, you're kind of advertising them. Yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to rescue them. We want people to recognize them for what they are. So.
And the girls who've already been trafficked know just about where the girl at. But it's this secret bond. We got this bond thing. We're so afraid of getting free because of the stereotype of how we've been treated for so long. That's why it's so important that we train the law enforcement, that we go in and train the hospitals and nurses and first respond to try to get a different approach so they can feel safe. You know, they see the light squad all the time right by, and they might be hurting. They might, just the idea might want to, I know for me, there was a whole lot of times that I just ran around. But I said, where am I run to? Where am I go? Who gonna help me? Ain't nobody listening to me. I've been crying for help since I was 3. I mean, you walk by me, you throw rocks at me, you yell out the window, you hold, you know, you just say all kind of, you know, horrible things to me. Been arrested 57 times over charges that it wasn't even my fault. I was forced to do it. I had to do it, you know, and things like that. So our goal is to have a whole different approach towards a victim, towards a survivor, you know, because these is our children. These are somebody's aunt, cousin, or something. And until I feel like that it's going to take someone that daughter that we don't think that might happen to really put a sting. And it's sad that somebody got to die in order for someone else to live. To wake up Kentucky, you know, and we need to have some kind of Amber Alert. Like the first time a girl comes and said that she's been trafficked or abused or whatever, it should never be an investigation. It should be right there on the spot. They need to be, if they disclose a name or anything like that, they need to be held for 48 hours until we get done investigating them. You know, find a room to put them in. If we had to rent somebody's school or gym, put them all in the gym or whatever we have to do. But we as a state, we need, this is our hometown and these is our children, you know. And for all y'all that's going to have children to be married one day, I know that y'all one day want this to really be something that we want everybody to know that come to Derby that you cannot come to our city and buy our children and our women. We're not tolerated. We here for this, just for horse entertainment, whatever they do in Derby, because I'm trying to figure out what they do in Derby besides pay for horses. They get some of the money to help save some lives, but that's another different story. But I just feel like that we need to change the stigma of this city as being the hub of trafficking. Kentucky is a beautiful city. It really is. And we're going to change that stigma of that.
It's a bureaucracy involved in the whole aspect, and that's what's so troubling, because it seems so simple, at least to us. I understand law enforcement, you know, they have their own issues of how all this can work or should work or whatever, but that's one of the most frustrating things to deal with, all the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
As far as like Derby, we see after Derby, do the people who are like paying for these services, like the client, do they know they're getting someone, you know, in trafficking, or do they think they're just buying a regular?
No,
I don't think they care.
They know and they don't care. They just want their fantasy fulfilled.
Let me tell you, all right.
It's pretty obvious sometimes. Like the ads that you look at, like a lot of times, like the women won't, you can't see their face. They have like tattoos or marks on them. That's like there's like they hide injuries, like there's bruises on them and things like that. So that's what I'm saying. When law enforcement looks at the ads, there's things they can see, and maybe the average person doesn't get it. But then when this woman's in your room and she's, you know, covered in bruises, you know, maybe something's wrong. So I think that that's right. I think that they probably would say they don't know, but that's probably willful ignorance. You know, if they even stop to think about it for like 10 seconds.
Did anybody see the human trafficking charges and arrests that came back in February, OMPD, we saw that? There needs to be more exposure. But what happened? In February, the Farm and Machinery Show was active. We came in, we posted some ads to make it appear that these were very young girls. And I won't even say women, I mean girls, preteen in some cases. Within 2 hours of, let me back up, within 4 hours of posting those ads, we had already received hundreds of phone calls. And we clearly said, this is my age. And so, there's a social problem.
Exactly.
I mean, it is a major, major issue. There has been thousands of phone calls off that one ad that we ran. We only charged 17 because that's all we could get, and we gave them every opportunity. You know, they think they're talking to the girl. We set it up. they think they're talking to a preteen girl. I'm only this old. Does that scare you? Oh no. I mean, that's the responses we were getting. So now when they go to court, the jury, the judge is going to hear those comments that they made, you know, and you know, I don't know. It is disappointing that you know that individuals are choosing, but I had no idea. We had no idea that it's going to be this big of a deal. We've got funding. We have a BJA, Bureau of Justice Assistance grant, and they told us that we can no longer use that grant to do what we did here in Louisville. That because we had created fake victims, because we were targeting, it's called demand reduction. You want to go after the people that want to have sex with underage girls. That was our thing. I mean, you wanted to, and we got in writing saying you can't do that. You can only use that to rescue real victims. So I have found another funding source. Yesterday we've put, you know, several thousand, well not several, $7,000 towards other events, the Derby, because we had so much success. If nothing else, we want to do two things. We want to rescue all these victims. We want to make them survivors as quickly as we can, and we want to get these guys that have these desires to have sexual contact with children. I want them in prison, and because that. The other thing that we do in the Department of Criminal Investigations, we got different branches, and I hope I'm not monopolizing this whole thing. But we have a cyber unit, and our cyber unit, all they do is go after child predators. So if you are videotaping children, if you have an interest in children, you are looking on the internet, and that's what you're targeting, that's what we go after. And we started out at posting ads for 15, 16-year-olds. We're down into the children. I mean, single-digit aged children. And these individuals, and I'm talking dozens of them, that's what they're interested in. And that's child pornography. And this is, I mean, are all you all law students, or many of you? If you go into prosecution, or you decide you want to be a judge someday, when you hear child pornography, what do you think about? How do you think those victims, those children are? They're not 14, 15. No. They're not 10, 11, or 12. No. They're not 4, 5, or 6. They are 1, 2, and 3-year-old children begging for their mothers as they're being raped. And I mean, I know it's some heavy stuff, but if you're all the future of making a difference potentially, you know, I mean, on the prosecution, on the, you know, whatever you decide to do, it's going to take all of us, not just law enforcement, not just what they're doing. It's going to take the public stepping up and saying, this is unacceptable. We got to do something about it.
Okay. Yes.
I absolutely see the benefit, and like you talked about with the Super Bowl, with the public eye on it. And then I know for that Farm and Tractor show, there's an increase in officers for this human trafficking sake. As far as at the Derby, I'm sure like the other ones, there'll be an increase in officer presence. But what do officers look for in that moment to try to prevent the activities instead of hindsight going back to save victims? Like, what are you all looking for at the Derby?
Okay, the actual Churchill Downs, that's not what we're worried about. It's everything that's going on in the hotel rooms that support that. In-calls, out-calls, I don't know if you've ever heard those terms. That's whether the individual will come to you or you have to go to the individual. So it's getting into that communication piece. It's finding how they're marketing and interrupting that marketing and saving that person. So, you know, officers are taught how to respond. And, you know, if they see something, you want them to react to it. The biggest thing that Angela, I think, said in the very beginning, I think it was Angela, talked about victim-centered or understanding that victim. Law enforcement wasn't taught that. Law enforcement was taught to interview suspects and perpetrators, and it is now, I mean, we just now started this. Last year, we started pushing that you have to understand where the victim's coming from, and you have to understand why they are in the situation that they're in. And so we're trying to educate law enforcement on their response. We're teaching them what to look for, but that really wasn't productive because what we were missing was they'd get a complaint, the public would see something, a truck stop or whatever. They'd show up, they'd ask the young lady, are you a victim of human trafficking? What? What is that? Is somebody forcing you to do this? No, I'm doing this because I have to do this. Do you have a pimp? No, that's my boyfriend. Well, your boyfriend shouldn't make you have sex with 30 guys a night and take all your money from that and force opioids and heroin down your throat every day so you stay addicted, stay attached to them, where, you know, that's the leash. And so the education piece is really not, we failed in the past in that we had an image of a trafficked person being in chains, locked in the basement. That's not the case. They're not being held. Doors aren't locked.
Correct.
I mean, they are being held because of an addiction and a need to survive. And I mean, if I'm wrong, I mean,
No, you're absolutely right. Whenever I ever get an opportunity to, every opportunity I do get a chance to, like today we had 5 police officers, law enforcement, and they're like, what do we supposed to say, you know? And one of the things that nobody never asks a victim, are they safe? Are you in a safe place? It's like, because it's an energy, you know, you feel like, wait a minute, people see me all day, but nobody never stopped and asked me, am I in a safe place? And when you say that, it's just like, it's like it opened, because when I get the conversation and I get the phone call, the first thing I ask is, you know, she said her name, I say, are you in a safe place? And you can hear the mumble in the phone, the cry, oh, they just immediately start crying, because no one never asks them that. And they walk around for years, where anybody saying, are you in a safe place? So that's he's like, okay, I got it. That's why I'm asking, you know. And I mean, I get calls all the time. I am so glad you told me that. I got somebody for you. Can I bring her right now? And I'm like, yeah, bring her on over, you know, stuff like that. So I think that's one of the key components, right?
And it goes back to, do you see this person as a prostitute, or do you see this person as a victim? You know, because socially, if this person is a prostitute, you know, I don't have to look at her again. She's dirty, she's whatever, you know. But if I see him as a victim, you know, then I want to help him. And law enforcement has a hard time because they don't get to see the whole picture. I mean, they're there for a very short period of time, unless somebody's a child. You know, the first thing they probably would go to is, this is an act of prostitution, if you have an adult female or an adult male, whatever. But they have a really hard time just because they don't know the whole thing, and they can't really get into somebody's head in that few minutes that they're trying to figure it out, unless there's an investigation or a small child.
These victims are going to lie. I mean, and the officers get turned off by that. And that's part of the victim-centered, is understanding why they're lying. They're trying to protect their interests. Just because you show up doesn't mean they're going to tell you the truth. I mean, it's quite the opposite.
My name is Kristy Love. Never knew my first name. I got so many AKs. So they don't never tell you, because they, you know, they're so fear of, if you knew my real name, you know, then you immediately like, you'll degrade me, you'll bash me. You won't even ask me if I'm hungry. Do I need a safe place to go? Or anything. You're just so concerned about what? My past and what crime I committed. But you don't understand that I've been walking for weeks and days with nothing to eat. My feet hurt, and I got an STD, and I just got choked and thrown out the window or whatever. And he told me if I don't go, he gonna kill me. You know, not safe questions, you know, and not even looking at me as a victim, you know, looking at me like I'm the one committing a crime. Something is wrong if you see a young girl, a woman walking the street 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It's supposed to be a city where people sleep. Now when people walk on the street, it's like after 12 o'clock at midnight is a whole new world. Welcome to the underground world of human trafficking. Why are you sleeping? It's a whole different world. It really is. I see it all the time. I get up every morning making my way to Kristy Love, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I see it. I see it. And when they see me, they just turn the corner because they want to come, but I know that they call it bottom feeder. He's over there watching. He in the bush somewhere, or sitting in the car, or it might be right in their house. Their house might be a trap house, and it don't have to really be a little nasty trap house, but it could be not just a normal house. And then they'll pay somebody to use their house that just been introduced to drug addiction, and they ain't got no more money. So the way to feed them is give them drugs to use their house as a watch house. So I mean, it's deeper than we think it is. It's really deep, and so that's why me and Amy, we school each other. You know what I'm saying? Because we see it. We can be just right now, so you have a conversation, and then next thing you know, we like, oh, must be a victim, and everybody knows me. I'll pull over. I don't stop John's picking up girls all the time. You know.
And that's what we don't ever really talk about are the Johns. I love that they did a reverse thing. I mean, I think that's the coolest thing ever. But, you know, I mean, that's the one piece. If we didn't have Johns, none of this would even exist. Why is it a John, you know, goes to pay for an act of prostitution and he doesn't go to jail? Because if the police come in, she will. He'll get a ticket and he'll go back home to his, you know, to his lovely wife and kids. I mean, there's something wrong here. Definitely something wrong with that.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I think, you know, all of us have a responsibility of after hearing this and leaving here is to no longer just even tolerate conversations about prostitution and make jokes about that or whatever, because it's not a laughing matter. I mean, it's real. Someone's daughter, you know, son, niece, whatever. And so we have an obligation to be the person that actually says in our circle of influence, I'm not going to tolerate this anymore. You know, and this is a legitimate problem in our city. Because if we don't, if we leave here and, you know, you're not even in, you know, this area of town, you go back to suburbia, you're not going to see necessarily this. But you have an obligation, you have information now that you're responsible for. So.
And it still goes on in suburbia. Absolutely, it's just much more underground.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's harder to see.
Right. Much.
Yeah.
Okay.
With this victim advocacy and reaching out to the public and like raising awareness of this problem, are we seeing any positives coming from it, like less or anything of that sort?
That's a really hard thing to gauge. It really is. I mean, I get those kind of questions all the time too. You know, if I'm trying to figure out how to get trainings paid for or something to try and get some grants. I mean, those things are rarely paid for because you can't, how can I prove that, you know, when I've spoke to 8,000 people that, you know, any of them have not come on to become victims, you know. It's almost impossible.
I think it's an embarrassment for our state to, you know, you got two survivor-led different programs that's willing to sacrifice their life, all our sweat and tears, to help our young youth and our children and women. It should never be a no or yes. It should immediately be an immediate response. And we don't ask for things like little things. I ask for a rollaway bed, so a girl can have somewhere to sleep, a bus pass so she can get back and forth to the doctor. We're real grateful that now we have our own licensed practitioner inside the Kristy Love Foundation. We have a clinic to get down to Amy's place so they can eat food like we eat, where it don't have to be pre-packed and where it be homemade cooked and where they can see people like us who've been exactly where they at and who get out and stay out, you know. So it's very important that I think in the next 5 years, so there's going to be a huge change in the state of Kentucky. But we've been fighting for a very long time. We really appreciate that our Attorney General and all the people at the Capitol are really looking at this for what it is, and we're not going to tolerate it. And I always say to the dirt on top of me, I will be fighting against human trafficking because I am a survivor, and that's my call of duty.
And you have 25 women at your organization right now.
Well, he asked me how many women. It's probably about 25 now, but I really don't know how many because we got 3 safe places, and they're all on the same street. And we just got awarded today. We're going to start a community garden for the girls. So we're excited about that.
That's an improvement right there.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 25 women that have been taken out.
Yeah, there's definitely improvement. It's not tangible with numbers, but
we love.
We're educating. I mean, we've got the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council. We've got the Department of Criminal Justice Training. We've got prosecutors that are now doing classes at their conferences. So there is improvement, but we're not even walking yet. I think we're just coming out of the crawling stage, and you know, we want to run with this. It's just going to take some time.
So I have two questions. One is sort of speaking towards the formalized training towards sort of victim first or survivor first response. I worked in domestic violence in DC with an organization called SAFE, and a big part of what we did was talking to officers constantly about how to interact with victims and survivors. So I would be interested in hearing a little bit more about how formalized that program is, how widespread it is in Kentucky, how we as future lawyers can support it, and then that leads into the second question, which is Derby is 3 weeks, 4 weeks away, and we've heard a little bit about what you need from us, just as citizens of the public, but how best can we support all of the work that you're doing in the coming weeks and then beyond?
The education, the victim-centered education is, we've got it where it's actually being taught at the academies again, but I'm embarrassed to say it's only an hour and a half, 2 hours. These are officers that are going to the academy for 20 weeks. That needs to be weeks. I mean, if you're going to be successful as a modern-day law enforcement officer, I think that's a key piece, is how you talk to people. I mean, everybody sees that, and we just failed. I think in the early 90s, when I was a newer detective, and did my own, started getting into the sex crimes field specifically, and then I was asked to do children cases, because children cases were considered the most difficult. You had to be a good interviewer. You had to be compassionate. You had to get down on your knees and willing to, be very patient, because those interviews often take hours and hours and hours. So you know that, but and this is something that I guess that changed in the mid-90s, or probably 93, 94, they started creating these centers where you would take children to do interviews. And so when they did that, they stopped training law enforcement how to do victim interviews. And that was, the state police stopped, Department of Criminal Justice, which is who trains basically everybody else, LMPD, everybody stopped doing it because you started relying on a different resource. Well, what occurred was everything from the mid-90s forward really lacked that ability to properly interview a victim, unless you were a Special Victims Unit detective. And LMPD, I'm telling you, has got a phenomenal SVU unit here in Louisville. You all are very lucky here, because these guys are compassionate. They were out last night at 10:30 at night doing search warrants, trying to find this 15-year-old girl, and they weren't carrying time. I mean, they do it because they want to do it. So it's about the education piece. It's got a long way to go. I mean, we're just getting our foot in the door. It's finding officers that are compassionate and getting them to run with it. They've got background in the story. That helps drive them. I do too. My dad was in dental school here at U of L, got hit head on by a drunk driver. So when I came out, I was going to lock up every daggone drunk driver I could find. My mother, she didn't tell me until I was older, but she was sexually abused as a child. And she said, this is important. You need to be compassionate, and gave me that insight. So that's what kind of drives me now, is that. So you have to find officers that at least in leadership positions, they're willing to drive that piece and to make sure that's important. So, I mean, I kind of gave you the long answer, but we've not done enough, and there's a lot more that can be done. And as far as you all, before we leave here today, I'll give you all the 1-800 national hotline number. I think that's important.
Yes.
I've got a daughter. She's a freshman at UK, and she was very compassionate about helping the animals. I mean, all through high school, she worked at dog rescues and different things. And so this past year, she's talking about, I want to get into the medical field. Well, I said, let's start helping people. Let's focus. That's a great thing. I'm glad people are doing that. But you don't have to have survivors just helping. I mean, you need, there's all kinds of stuff that they do, and there's other entities just like that.
they need help. They need money. They need time. I mean, to help get things ready. So that's just kind of my piece on it. But if it's something you're compassionate about, do a little research. You've got 2 great examples of how
papers.
Yeah, you can make things happen. And I'm telling you, until they got on the scene, it was a losing battle. I mean, we finally got some good resources.
If anyone wants to reach out to anybody here, if you email me, I can put you in touch with anybody on the panel that you might want to follow up with.
We have some business cards.
And we have business cards. Look at that.
And Free to Hope has some outreach stuff.
We have promotional materials.
We got a couple of things going on, so we welcome y'all to come and volunteer. And when people see y'all volunteer with agencies like that, it'd be like, okay, you know, I just take one person and then you create a whole family. So it's very important, and I think it's a topic that need to be discussed at the dinner table. You know what I'm saying? It could just be at a, with one of your friends or things like that. You'd be surprised what kind of disclosure you get, because they're going to be like, wow, I could look at someone who's family concerned about my welfare. And we had a lady who lives in our home. She was a retired police officer, and she had a secret to tell. And she's been with me for 4 years. But the trauma from that has made her mentally ill. And so we're dealing with that right now. So it can happen to anybody.
And I urge you all to go to the Facebook pages of our organizations, because we do a lot during Derby.
Yes.
We have an outreach Free to Hope does Saturday night, this coming Saturday night. And we'll also do some more remote ones closer to Derby as well. So anybody's more than welcome to get involved in those. They're very safe. We actually go to businesses and we give them big cards with things to look for. The 888 number for the trafficking hotline. It's kind of fun. You bring some friends, you do it, and we've had a lot of great results from it. So it's one tangible way you can get involved without having to, do too much, and maybe get out of your comfort zone. But
we take your clothes. We take your donation of clothes, food. If you would like to do a sock and hat drive. Just different types of stuff like that, journals. We always can use paint because our girls go down there. Just stuff to, you'd be surprised. These girls are really creative. I mean, they feed me real good. But they can cook, and you'd be surprised. They want to be doctors and lawyers. Some already got their bachelor's degrees, and they just something happened along the way and has stopped them from going to school and everything. So our girls get them back in school. We have a resource lab. We got 8 computers inside the Kristy Love Foundation, so we can introduce the girls back to college and get their GED and things like that and stuff. And then when we get down there doing all the things, we go down to Amy's drop-in center. Hopefully we get our yoga class down there, and so we get our yoga going. Doing all the things to make them more healthy, safer, and have healthy boundaries for themselves.
And that's the thing. It's a whole retraining thing, because whenever you have a child that's sexually abused early, development stops in a lot of areas. Yeah, they grow up to be, an adult, but there's things they don't know how to do. There's more than likely relationship boundaries they don't understand. Any sexually abused child, you'll find that. And, cause sometimes life just comes and socks these people just like it does anybody else, but they don't have the ability to deal with it, or they don't have a family that, surrounds them, or any of these other things. And, we're all really kind of just one step away from some really bad things happening. And, once that gets into motion, it can just take a life really far out. So just remember, I mean, it could be anybody, it could be a family member. You might be surprised. It's really easy for it to happen.
I think that's actually a really good way to wrap up.
Yeah, I think it was.
Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you so much to this panel. I hope everyone got some information that's useful, and please, a great question about how do you guys get involved. There's so many ways, and there's such a great need in this community. So and it doesn't have to be money, like your time is valuable.
Yes.
So we have some brochures down here if anyone wants to pick one up, and at any point if you forget or you lose it and you can't remember who to talk to, I am a point person. You can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to direct you to the right people.
And let me give you the hotline number.
Yes, the hotline.
This is, because this is how you get the information to all of us really quick. Everybody's ready. The number, it's a 188 number, 1-888-373-7888. I repeat that, 888-373-7888.
Is that for all of Kentucky or national?
That's, they're national.
It's national. But it'll direct you to a local.
Yeah, it's 24/7, and they'll gather the information and make sure it gets to the right place.
Well, I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.